Good evening and welcome to the Hour of the Time. I'm your host, William Cooper. Ah, yes, a nation or world of people who will not use their intelligence are no better than animals who do not have intelligence. Such people are stakes on the table and beasts of burden by choice and consent. Do you fit that description? I certainly hope not. If you do, then it's time to wake up and change it. And if you really want to know in a nutshell what's wrong with this country, go in your bathroom and look in the mirror. Something's wrong, folks, in America. Something's really wrong. Something is destroying everything that we've ever held dear in this country. What is it? Well, if you've been listening to this show, many of you already know what it is. If you've just been listening to the show for a little while, you may have some idea, but you're not quite really sure yet what's going on. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, it's all about religion. Whether you're religious or not doesn't make any difference. It's all about religion. Whether you believe in God or not, it doesn't make any difference. It's all about a big battle between good and evil. And most of it, I got to tell you, exists in the minds of men. Some of it's real. The question is, what's real? What's deception? What should we be paying any attention to? What is it that's driving us insane? Yes, something is wrong in America.
The sound you hear is dripping blood. This is the start of Black Sunday.
Today's newspapers, folks, are full of stories about the rampant rise in divorce rates, the increasing abuse of children by some parents, increases in the incidence of rape pornography being read by an increasing number of people, more crimes against property, demands for world government, urgings for national borders to fall, Christian churches being closed because they will not seek licensing by the state, etc., 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 and I could go on and on and on and on and on. But why? Why are these things happening? Why are all of the legacies of the past, the family, national borders, the right to practice any chosen religion, the right to private property, among other things, under such an attack? Is it possible that there are actually people and organizations who really want to change the basic order of things? Well, my regular listeners know the answer to that. Clues to the answers to these questions, folks, can be gleaned from some comments made by people and organizations that are talking about these wide-ranging changes in the nature of our lifestyle. An Associated Press dispatch on July the 26th, 1968 reported this, quote, New York Governor Nelson A. Rockefeller says as president he would work toward international creation of a new world order, unquote. And you thought George Bush coined that phrase? Surprise, surprise. On January the 30th, 1976, a new document called the Declaration of Interdependence was introduced to the American people, and it was signed by 124 traitors. 32 senators and 92 representatives, altogether 124 traitors in Washington, D.C., and it read in part, quote, 2 centuries ago, our forefathers brought forth a new nation. Now we must join with others to bring forth a new world order, unquote. And you thought George Bush coined that phrase. Surprise, surprise. Another individual who has commented is Henry Kissinger, probably the greatest traitor this nation has ever known, former Secretary of State. According to the Seattle Post-Intelligence of April 18, 1975, Mr. Kissinger said, quote, Our nation is uniquely endowed to play a creative and decisive role in the new order which is taking form around us, unquote. George Bush gave the commencement address at Texas A&M University on May 12, 1989, and he used similar words as well. His speech was on the subject of Soviet-American relations, and he was quoted as saying in part, quote, Ultimately, our objective is to welcome the Soviet Union back into the world order. Perhaps the world order of the future will truly be a family of nations," unquote. Historian Walter Mills maintained that prior to World War I, Colonel Edward Mandell House, the major advisor to Woodrow Wilson, the president at the time, had a hidden motive for involving America in the war. The historian wrote this, quote, "The colonel's sole justification for preparing such a batch of blood for his countrymen was his hope of establishing a new world order of peace and security," unquote. You see how these people fool themselves? They always say that the end is peace and security, a world utopia. But to get it, they spill more blood than ever has been spilled in history. Each time they try to bring about their utopia, the blood runs in the streets. They're liars. They're hypocrites. They're manipulators, deceivers. They're the worshipers of Lucifer. Adolf Hitler, a socialist and the head of the German government prior to and during the nation's involvement in World War II, is quoted as saying this, quote, "National Socialism will use its own revolution for the establishing of a new world order," unquote. Adolf Hitler was a socialist. Nazi means National Socialism. Hitler confided to Hermann Röschning, the president of the Danzig Senate, quote, "National Socialism is more than a religion. It is the will to create Superman," unquote. And what is the number of the man? 666. You see, in the New World Order, only one man will be allowed to live, the new man, the illumined man, and the number of that man is 666. You will see that number increasingly all around you. You will also begin to see pyramids increasingly all around you, and the eye in the pyramid, and the eye alone, and you will see circles with a dot in the center, and you will see obelisks appearing all over the place. And these are not the only signs. There are many, many, many more. They are the signs of the religion of mystery, Babylon. Hitler added this thought, quote, "Well, yes, we are barbarians, and barbarians we wish to remain. It does us honor. It is we who will rejuvenate the world. The present world is near its end. Our only task is to sack it," unquote. Another book on his background quoted his comments that his Nazi party had a hidden purpose, one that was not perceived by the world at large. Mr. Hitler was quoted as saying this, "He who has seen in National Socialism only a political movement has seen nothing, for it is a religion." The humanist religion issued a manifesto in 1933 stating its beliefs about the world in general. It took the following position about the need for the wealthy governments to share their wealth with the less fortunate nations. It is the moral obligation of the developed nations to provide, through an international authority, economic assistance to the developing portions of the globe. Now that is a lie, folks. It means that it's okay for some of us to lay back and do nothing and reap the rewards of the labor of others. That's socialism. That's what it's all about. Communism, socialism, it's the same. And these people, the worshippers of Mystery Babylon, are the original communists. They are international socialism. They invented it. It is their creation. It is their dream of a world utopia. A one-world totalitarian socialist government. The April 1974 issue of Foreign Affairs, the quarterly periodical issued by the Council on Foreign Relations in New York, had an article in it by Richard N. Gardner, the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for International Organizations in the Lyndon Johnson and John Kennedy administrations, and he stated this, quote, "We are likely to do better by building our house of world order from bottom up rather than from the top down. An end run around national sovereignty, eroding it piece by piece, is likely to get us to world order faster than the old-fashioned assault," unquote. Even the Communist Party is voicing similar thoughts. The People's Daily World for Thursday, March 9th, 1989, contained an article written by Angela Davis. You remember her? Those familiar with Miss Davis will remember that she was the vice presidential candidate for the Communist Party a few years ago. She currently is a member of the National Committee of the Communist Party of the United States, and she is quoted in the paper as saying, quote, "One underlying effect of anti-communism in this respect is to encourage a certain hesitancy to embrace solutions which call for deep structural socio-economic transformation," unquote. Another communist, Alexei Kovylov, spoke at an evening meeting held at Windstar, Colorado in August 1985 and gave the participants in attendance a surprise presentation. He spoke about the 12th World Festival of Youth and Students held in Moscow a few months prior to his lecture. He said, quote, "There were 3 programs. The first was political and dealt with the various issues of peace and disarmament. The second was dedicated to environmental issues and to the new international economic order," unquote. The alleged need for a change in the basic way things are done is consistent with the teachings of the father of communism, Karl Marx. He's not really the father of communism, but it's a name that's been tagged onto him. You see, he was just a hack writer hired by the mystery religion of Babylon to write the Communist Manifesto. It was not his idea, but he's reaped the benefits of it, if you can call them benefits. But he co-authored the Communist Manifesto with Frederick Engels, another hack writer, in 1848. Mr. Marx wrote that the communists, quote, "openly declare that their ends can be attained only by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions," unquote. Nesta Webster, a writer on the subject of conspiratorial organizations in the past, wrote this in her book entitled Secret Societies, quote, "The revolution desired by the leaders of world revolution is a moral and spiritual revolution, an anarchy of ideas by which all standards set up throughout 19 centuries shall be reversed, all honored traditions trampled underfoot, and above all, the Christian ideal finally obliterated," unquote. Some of the Catholic popes in the past have commented on the major changes coming in the future. One such pope was Pope Pius XI, who wrote the following in 1937. "Communism has behind it occult forces for which a long time have been working for the overthrow of the Christian social order," unquote. One of the popes who preceded him, Pope Pius IX, wrote this in November 1846 about the changes that he saw in the future. Quote, "That infamous doctrine of so-called communism is absolutely contrary to the natural law itself, and if once adopted, would utterly destroy the rights, property, and possessions of all men, and even society itself," unquote. Now, don't get all worked up about what the Pope says, because they have succeeded now with this Pope in putting one of their own upon the throne of the Vatican. It had long been their dream, and now it is true. And the bans have been lifted against Catholics joining secret societies. And many of the hierarchy of the Vatican belong to the secret societies, the Freemasons, Propaganda 2, etc., etc., etc. You will find an obelisk, the symbol of the phallus, the penis of Osiris, in the Vatican courtyard. If you don't believe me, go look. Another individual who wrote about the future was Dr. Jose Arguelles of an organization known as the Planet Art Network. Dr. Arguelles wrote, quote, "Also implicit in all these events is a call for another way of life, another way of doing things, a redistribution of global wealth. In short, a new world order," unquote. Now, just what the future society was that these people are talking about was described in a brief manner by Marilyn Ferguson in her book entitled The Aquarian Conspiracy, and she wrote this, quote, "The new world is the old, transformed," unquote. Another clue about what is in store for the future world was offered by Dr. James H. Billington, who received his doctorate as a Rhodes Scholar. Where have you heard that before? You have a Rhodes Scholar sitting in the Oval Office right now. Received his doctorate as a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford University and has taught at Harvard and Princeton universities. He wrote this in his book entitled Fire in the Minds of Men. Quote, "This book seeks to trace the origins of a faith perhaps the faith of our time. What is new is the belief that a perfect secular order will emerge from the forcible overthrow of traditional authority, unquote. You hear that? They believe a perfect secular order will emerge. Nothing perfect will ever emerge from the minds of imperfect men, and no men will ever be ruled by other imperfect men in any kind of a perfect utopian order, secular or otherwise. That is why we must be eternally vigilant. Eternally vigilant. That these future changes would involve force and slavery was confirmed by B.F. Skinner, chairman of the psychology department at Harvard University. In his book entitled Beyond Freedom and Dignity, Dr. Skinner has been called the most influential of living American psychologists by Time magazine. So the world should listen to the professor when he speaks. The magazine told the reader what the message of Professor Skinner's book was. Quote, "We can no longer afford freedom, and so it must be replaced with control over man, his conduct, and his culture," unquote. Not long ago in the Los Angeles Times, there was an article called 10 Forecasts for the Coming Decade. One of these was chemical or electronic implants to control individual behavior on a 24-hour basis. Another student of these changes is Alvin Toffler, who wrote this in his book entitled The Third Wave. And you should read everything that he's written, by the way, because what he's writing is what is coming. Quote, "A new civilization is emerging in our lives. This new civilization brings with it new family styles, changed ways of working, loving, and living, a new economy, new political conflicts, and beyond all this, an altered consciousness as well. The dawn of this new civilization is the single most explosive fact of our lifetimes," unquote. Another scientist involved in commenting upon the future changes was Dr. Carl Sagan, and he's observed this, quote, "It's clear that sometime, relatively soon in terms of the lifetime of the human species, people will identify with the entire planet and the species," unquote. Now the reason, folks, why these changes are necessary was explained by Manly P. Hall, perhaps the world's leading authority on esoteric words and language. He was a 33rd degree Freemason. He wrote in his book entitled Lectures on Ancient Philosophy, quote, "The time has not yet arrived when the average man is strong enough or wise enough to rule himself," unquote. And he explained who he considered worthy enough to rule those on the world considered by the experts to be incapable of governing themselves. He wrote this, quote, "Never will peace reign upon the earth until we are ruled by the fit." And who is the fit? Why, them, of course. The illumined, the priest of the mystery religion of Babylon. Mr. Hall even indicated that these changes would occur soon. He wrote this comment in his book previously cited, quote, 100 years ago, meaning in 1884, folks, it was predicted that within a few centuries men would revert to the gods of Plato and Aristotle. We may all look forward with eager anticipation to that nobler day when the gods of philosophy once more shall rule the world, unquote. Aldous Huxley, in his book called Brave New World Revisited, quotes a character called the Grand Inquisitor in one of Fyodor Mikhailovich Dostoevsky's parables as saying this, quote, "In the end they, the people, will lay their freedom at our, the controller's feet and say to us, 'Make us your slaves, but feed us,'" unquote. The Tucson Citizen newspaper of November the 3rd, 1988, printed a photograph of a group of people involved in a march for literacy, and it clearly demonstrated that at least some people in America are now asking their government to make them their slaves. The picture showed a demonstrator carrying a picket sign that read, quote, "Uncle Sam, we want you to support us," unquote. Mr. Huxley gave us a date when we could expect these changes to occur. He wrote the following in his book written in 1958, quote, "The 21st century will be the era of world controllers," unquote. And then he told us why these controllers would not fail. Quote, The older dictators fell because they could never supply their subjects with enough bread, enough circuses, enough miracles and mysteries. Under a scientific dictatorship, education will really work, with the result that most men and women will grow up to love their servitude and will never dream of revolution. There seems to be no good reason why a thoroughly scientific dictatorship should ever be overthrown, unquote. Someone who might have given the world the date for the commencement of these predicted changes was Zbigniew Brzezinski, a Marxist, President Jimmy Carter's national security advisor during his 4-year administration. And he wrote the following in his book entitled Between Two Ages, by the way. You should read every book that he's ever written. You will be angered. Quote, either 1976 or 1989, the 200th anniversary of the Constitution could serve as a suitable target date for culminating a national dialogue on the relevance of existing arrangements, the workings of the representative process, and the desirability of imitating the various European regionalization reforms and of streamlining the administrative structure, unquote. And it did begin exactly when he said it would. So the people of the world can now determine what those changes are that those in the positions of implementing changes have in store for them. In summary, folks, these changes are: the old world is coming to an end. It will be replaced with a new way of doing things. The new world will be called the New World Order. This new structuring will redistribute property from the have nations and will give it to the have-not nations. The New World Order will include changes in the family, the workplace, religion. The United States will play a major role in bringing it to the world. World wars have been fought to further its aims. Adolf Hitler, the Nazi socialist, supported the goal of the planners. The majority of the people will not readily accept the New World Order, but will be deceived into accepting it by two strategies. One, those in favor of the changes will have become seated in the very thrones of power, generally without the public realizing that fact, and this has already occurred. Two, the old world order will be destroyed piece by a series of planned nibbles at the established format. The Communist Party is actively supporting the changes to the New World Order. The basic tenets of Christianity, which were the base for the old world order, will have to be eliminated. If the slower methodical techniques of change do not function, violence will be introduced and controlled by the planners, including possibly a World War III using atomic weapons. The people of the world will give up their freedom to the controllers because there will be a planned famine or some other serious occurrence such as a depression or war. The change to the New World Order is coming shortly, folks, and it has already begun. However, if that is not the case, it will be introduced one step at a time so that the entire structure will be in place by the year 1999. We've got to take a short break. Don't go away, folks. I'll be right back after this very short pause.
The Mummy.
Fear will freeze you when you face it.
The Mummy.
Torn from the darkest tomb of the pharaohs, it rises from the quiet dust of centuries to wreak a strange vengeance against mankind.
The Mummy.
It tears steel bars like paper. It snaps men's spines like matchsticks. It walks through bullets like a ghost. It sees without eyes, it lives without breath, yet its desires are strangely, madly human.
The motion picture screen's most shocking experience in suspense.
In chilling technicolor.
The Mummy.
Yes, folks, something is indeed wrong in America. And many sense that changes in this nation's lifestyle are occurring. Most of us know full well that these changes are taking place. The newspapers are saturated with articles reporting the activities of those advocating increased governmental spending for a variety of unconstitutional purposes. Organizations supporting a globalism concept urge the world to adopt a one-world government. Psychologists preaching the destruction of the family unit and recommending that the society rear the nation's children. Governments closing private schools, and nations forming regional governments under which national borders are scheduled to disappear. And still the sheeple think that all of this is happening by accident. And any concept that it is being brought about by a carefully orchestrated plan is the product of crazy conspiratorialists. Since these changes appear to be part of the new philosophy known as the New World Order, anyone desiring to know the future has to become familiar with this new phrase and what it portends for the world of tomorrow, and you will quickly see that it is the result of a well thought out, well conceived, and well orchestrated plan. Indeed, it is called the Great Work. As an indication that major changes are coming in tomorrow's world, one of the current trends mentioned is the call for a one-world government. And one of those supporting this leap forward is Norman Cousins, president of the World Federalist Society, and he's on record as saying this, quote, "World government is coming. In fact, it is inevitable. No arguments for it or against it can change that fact," unquote. And I say that is a lie. 240 million Americans standing up in concert with each other, holding a rifle in their hands, can stop it instantly in its tracks. And that's the truth of why we were given the second article in amendment to the Constitution. It has nothing to do with hunting or preserving your private property. It has to do with preserving our freedom. The goal of a one-world government, folks, is not a new thought. One of the earliest formal organizations that supported the concept of that goal was the Illuminati, founded on May 1st, 1776 by Adam Weishaupt, a Jesuit priest, a professor at Ingolstadt University, a Jesuit university, a teacher of canon law. Professor Weishaupt was quoted as saying this, quote, "It is necessary to establish a universal regime and empire over the whole world," unquote. Now let me tell you the truth about the Illuminati. Adam Weishaupt did not establish the Illuminati, nor did the Illuminati die with Adam Weishaupt. Make sure you understand that. A more modern organization that supports the coming changes is the Masonic order, called simply the Freemasons, or for short, the Masons. Has nothing to do with bricklayers, folks. The term originally comes from the French, Freemason, which literally means the sons of light. This worldwide fraternity has members in America, as will be discussed, and they too support a call for a one-world government. One who has written about this secret organization is Paul Fisher, and he says this about them in his book entitled Behind the Lodge Door, quote, "Masonry will eventually rule the world," unquote. Benevolent fraternal organization. Albert Pike, and you're going to hear an awful lot about Albert Pike during this series, the sovereign grand commander of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry here in the United States from 1850 to 1891, the man who founded the Ku Klux Klan and B'nai B'rith, wrote a book entitled Morals and Dogma. And when and if you can find that book, don't pass it up, buy it and read it. Mr. Pike has been praised by his fellow Masons as a member almost without parallel in the history of the Masonic order. He was a great friend of Giuseppe Mazzini, the ruler of the European branch of the Illuminati. Carl Cloudy himself, a Masonic writer of great esteem, wrote this about Pike. Quote, "Albert Pike, one of the greatest geniuses Freemasonry has ever known. He was a mystic, a symbolist, a teacher of the hidden truths of Freemasonry," unquote. So the outsider can know that whenever Mr. Pike speaks, he speaks with authority and knowledge. He is perhaps the greatest Masonic writer of all time, and I would add next to Manly P. Hall. His book is given to each Scottish Rite Southern Jurisdiction Freemason who is asked to read it. There seems to be a difference of opinion as to whether or not this book is still required reading for each Scottish Rite Mason, as we were told that it was given to each Scottish Rite Mason in Tucson. Other Masons say that that is not true, but you have to remember they're sworn not to reveal the secrets of the lodge, and therefore you can never trust them to tell you the truth no matter what they're telling you. But in this book, Morals and Dogma, Pike informs the new Mason about the moral teachings of the Masonic Lodge. He instructs the Masonic reader that the order will eventually be asked to rule the entire globe, and he wrote this, quote, "The world will soon come to us for its sovereigns and pontiffs. We shall constitute the equilibrium of the universe and be rulers over the masters of the world," unquote. He wrote this supportive statement in a book entitled Legenda, quote, "And thus the warfare against the powers of evil that crushed the order of the temple goes steadily on, and freedom marches ever onward toward the conquest of the world," unquote. Reference to the order of the temple is reference to the Knights Templars, who were destroyed in concert by King Philip of France and Pope Clement V. And the powers of evil referred to in this paragraph is the Christian church, the Christian religion, Christianity as a whole. Let me read it to you again, just in case you weren't paying attention. Quote, "And thus the warfare against the powers of evil that crushed the order of the temple goes steadily on, and freedom marches ever onward toward the conquest of the world," unquote. The order of the temple Mr. Pike was writing about was the Knights Templar, which was, according to him, quote, "devoted to the cause of opposition to the tiara, the Pope's triple crown, and the crown of kings," unquote. Well, then is it any wonder that the King of France and the Pope crushed the Templars in France? For that is the only place that they were truly crushed. Mr. Pike said that the Catholic Church was a power of evil because it had crushed the Templars, even though he admitted that they were devoted to opposition to the Church and its leader, the Pope. But the major point of that quote is that these forces of opposition, presumably meaning the Masons, are marching onward toward the conquest of the world. Mr. Pike repeated his devotion to the conquest of the world with this comment at the end of his book entitled Morals and Dogma, quote, "Such, my brother, is the true word of a Master Mason, such the true royal secret which makes possible, and shall at length make real, the holy empire of true Masonic brotherhood," unquote. Now, all of you Master Masons out there who've been writing me letters, don't write to me anymore. You are my enemies. And if I can, I will destroy you. Don't write to me and profess your innocence, for your own have proclaimed your guilt. And if you are truly innocent, then you're just a foolish dupe, and you better get out while you can. The major worldwide movement that champions a one-world government, folks, under a religious leader is a new phenomenon occurring worldwide called the New Age movement, a creation of Freemasonry. The newspaper put out by the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry is called The New Age. Tex Mars, a researcher into this new religion, has written 2 books on the subject. Both of these books are excellent primers for those who wish to know more about the beliefs of this religion. The 2 books are entitled Dark Secrets of the New Age and Mystery Mark of the New Age, and he has written, quote, "The New Age movement has undeniably taken on the definite form of a religion, of course, because it is Mystery Babylon." He goes on to say, "complete with an agreed-upon body of doctrine, printed scripture, a pattern of worship and ritual, a functioning group of ministers and lay leaders," unquote. Another writer who has written 2 books on the New Age religion is Constance Cumby. Her 2 books are called The Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow and A Planned Deception. She has written this, quote, "The New Age movement is a religion, complete with its own Bibles, prayers, and mantras, Vatican City, Jerusalem equivalents, priests and gurus, born-again experiences, they call it rebirthing, spiritual laws and commandments, psychics and prophets, and nearly every other indicia of a religion," unquote. The new religion has a series of leaders. One is a woman named Alice Bailey, a prolific writer on the subject of the New Age. She was the founder of an organization called the Arcane School, one of the major Lucis Trust divisions. The Lucis Trust was a major publisher of books supporting the religion and published a newsletter or newspaper called Lucifer. In her book entitled The Externalization of the Hierarchy, she told her readers who the organizations were that were going to bring the New Age religion to the world, and she identified them as being, quote, the three main channels through which the preparation for the New Age is going on might be regarded as the church, the Masonic fraternity, and the educational field. And folks, that is exactly who is bringing it to realization. The main thrust of this program is going to be to examine only one of the three organizations mentioned by Alice Bailey, that being the Masonic fraternity. There are numerous works by other writers, lecturers, researchers exposing the involvement of the church in the educational field in the New Age movement and in the New World Order. I'm not going to attempt to duplicate those efforts. However, only a few are aware of the involvement of the Freemasons, and that is why I have chosen to concentrate on that organization, Mystery Babylon. And the reason I'm concentrating on that organization is because it is their members who have infiltrated the church and the educational field who control those other two organizations. So really there's only one organization that needs to be dealt with, and that is Freemasonry. Another major writer on the New Age movement is Benjamin Krim, and he admitted in his book entitled The Reappearance of the Christ and the Masters of Wisdom that, quote, the new religion will manifest, for instance, through organizations like Masonry. In Freemasonry is embedded the core of the secret of the occult mysteries, unquote. So, Masonry conceals a great mystery inside its temples, one that is connected somehow to the New Age movement. The Masons admit in some of their writings that they too are anticipating a New Age, a series of major changes. Henry Clausen, the past sovereign Grand Commander, the equivalent of their president of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, has been quoted as saying this, quote, we look towards a transforming into a New Age using, however, the insight and wisdom of the ancient mystics, unquote. The Masons claim that the things that they believe in are as old as the ancient civilizations. They also claim that these mystics, the ancient philosophers, had the wisdom of all ages and that somehow this knowledge has become lost through the centuries. Humanity today does not possess this knowledge, but it has become the task of the Masons and other truth seekers who turn out in every case of investigation to be liars and deceivers and manipulators, to rediscover these principles for the benefit of all mankind. Those possessing this knowledge will correct the world's current problems. Some of the Masons also claim to have identified the cause of these problems. One of the most prolific writers on the subject of this lost truth, as I have mentioned earlier, is Manly P. Hall, a 33rd degree Mason. For those unfamiliar with the Masonic degrees, all Masons in America start through what is called the Blue Lodge, consisting of only 3 degrees. A Master Mason is of the 3rd degree and really knows nothing, even though he thinks that he has been illumined, and I get letters from them all the time. I'm a Master Mason, and I never heard of any of the stuff that you're talking about. Oh, boy. It amazes me, folks. It just absolutely amazes me that people are so stupid. Drives me wild. The initiate into the Blue Lodge goes through 3 separate and different initiation ceremonies, one for each degree. After completing these ceremonies, he may stay where he is or choose to affiliate himself with either the York Rite, which has 13 degrees, or the Scottish Rite, which has 32, and then the meritorious 33rd. The latter is divided into 2 separate jurisdictions, the Southern and the Northern. And these are based primarily on state borders, and whether one joins one or the other depends on where the initiate lives. The 2 Scottish rites have an additional 29 degrees, making for a total of 32. There is one more degree called the 33rd degree, which is honorary, and only a few are invited into that degree, and to even be considered, they must perform some major work toward the completion of the great work, which is the plan to bring about the utopia on earth, the socialist dream. The York Rite has a total of 9 degrees. However, since little has been revealed about this order, we will concentrate on only the Scottish Rite, and in particular the southern jurisdiction. Well, I've since discovered that the York Rite has a total of 13 degrees, folks, not just 9. Mr. Hall has written a book entitled Lectures on Ancient Philosophy, in which he talks a great deal about the Masonic fraternity. And this is his comment about the coming changes. Quote, "A new day is dawning for Freemasonry. From the insufficiency of theology and the hopelessness of materialism, men are turning to seek the God of philosophy." Unquote. Notice that Mr. Hall has said that current theology, obviously current religion, has proven insufficient. Also, he feels that materialism, meaning the right to private property, is also a failure. But more importantly, he points out that this new God of the Freemasons is somehow different from the God of the Jews and Christians, as will be illustrated later. Some of the Masons believe that the God of the Bible is a God of evil. Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, perhaps the founder of the current New Age movement, has also determined that the Masons are somehow supportive of her religious views. She wrote this in her book entitled The Secret Doctrine. Quote, "At the end of the 18th and the beginning of the 19th centuries, many Freemasons traveled to Tibet, where they were initiated into the esoteric, defined as intended for or understood by only a chosen few as an inner group of disciples or initiates, by an esoteric order of the Masters of Wisdom." Unquote. It should be expected that she would support the Masonic fraternity. In 1875, she founded an organization called the Theosophical Society, basically dedicated to teaching the world about her new secret religion. One of the earliest members of that organization was Albert Pike, later to become the Sovereign Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Albert Pike, who later became a 33rd degree Mason, the highest degree attainable, also saw that there were some significant changes coming and that he was supportive of those changes. He wrote the following in his book entitled Morals and Dogma. Quote, "We can look on all the evils of the world and see that it is only the hour before sunrise and that the light is coming." Unquote. Now, if Mr. Hall is right, the evils that his fellow Mason Albert Pike saw are connected to current religion, and that which is coming is somehow different from these religious views. Mr. Hall, who is mentioned previously as another 33rd degree Mason, also wrote that a new day was coming and that it was not too far into the future. Quote, "A new light is breaking in the east." The significance of the location, the east, I have already pointed out. It is the point where the sun rises. "A more glorious day is at hand. The rule of the philosophic elect, the dream of the ages, will yet be realized and is not too far distant." Unquote. So, Mr. Hall is also expecting that these changes are about to occur in the not too distant future. Someone who attempted to zero in on when these changes were expected to occur was Alice Bailey, previously mentioned. She wrote about when she thought the New Age would arrive. Quote, "Eventually there will appear the Church Universal, and its definite outlines will appear towards the close of this century." Unquote. And you have already seen the emergence of the Universalist Church. Since she wrote early in the 20th century, we can see that she was predicting the eventual arrival of the New Age sometime around the 1990s. This estimate of that date is not too far wrong, as will be demonstrated later in this series of programs. Whatever is coming in the future, some New Agers have told us that they expect that it will last for a long time. One such writer is Ruth Montgomery, who wrote that she saw that the new religion would rule the earth for 1,000 years. She wrote the following in her book entitled Herald for the New Age. Quote, "The New Age, the millennium, a millennium is a period of 1,000 years, will see an end to that strife, at least for 1,000 years." Unquote. Now, just what the New Age religion that will last for at least 1,000 years on earth, what is it? One who attempted to answer that question was Constance Cumby in her book entitled The Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow. She wrote that these were the basic tenets of the new religion. Listen closely. "The plan for the future includes the installation of a New World Messiah, the implementation of a New World government and New World religion under Maitreya, an individual who will be examined later in this series of programs. 2, a universal credit card system will be implemented as a cashless society. 3, a world food authority will control all of the world's food supply. 4, a universal tax. 5, a universal draft. And 6, they intend on utterly rooting out people who believe the Bible and worship God, and to completely stamp out Christianity from the face of this earth. As was discussed prior to this summary, certain people have indicated that they see the Catholic Church as an enemy. Here, Mrs. Cumby says that they see not only Catholicism as the enemy, they also see all of Christianity as an enemy. Whatever the New Agers believe in, folks, it appears to be growing in popularity. Bantam Books, one of this nation's leading publishing houses, has reported that the sales of their New Age titles has increased tenfold in the past decade. Time magazine reports that the number of New Age bookstores has doubled in the past 5 years to a total of about 2,500. According to an article in Forbes magazine, quote, publishers estimate that total sales of New Age titles today are at least $100 million at retail, unquote. So whatever they believe in, many believe in it. But perhaps the most insightful comment about the nature of what the New Age religion believe in and who they worshipped as their God was written by Mrs. Cumby in her book entitled The Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow. She wrote that they had, quote, the intent of bringing about a new world order, an order that writes God out of the picture and deifies Lucifer, unquote. So if Mrs. Cumby and the other writers on the subject are right, the New Age movement needs to be studied in some depth. We know that the goal of Freemasonry, at least that which is stated, is to bring about the new man, the illumined man, and the number of the man is 666.
All right, I'm going ahead and putting in the Zoom information in the description box. People who want to come in and discuss it may come in and discuss it, though I have a feeling only a few will come in to discuss it. Most of you guys, for some reason, would like to chat in the live chat only. That's fine. That is fine. There's definitely not a lot of people who watch and talk and discuss. I do hear or see some people listening, so that's good. You know, things that I like to talk about is, it's either very transparent of who rules the world. It's definitely George Soros, right? The Koch brothers, those two families, maybe the Rothschilds, they all rule the world. We all know that they, or maybe Bill Gates and that Oracle of Omaha, you know, those billionaires, they rule the world, right? Or, you know, maybe it's just some guy that works at like Mickey D's. He's we all know that they've got a lot of power, you know, the Mickey D employee. He's they definitely hold everyone in their grasp of their hands with those nice fatty French fries. It's like enslaved to the French fries, my friends. Those double arches, oh my goodness, who'd have thought double arches, that symbolism right there makes everyone want French fries, and they get mind controlled. They get addicted to those French fries, I'm telling you. It's not the burgers, it's the French fries. Trust me. I know. Look at me, I don't know. Let's see. Nope, let's get rid of that. So, I mean, this is hour 6. We've got at least 36, 37, 38. about more episodes, hours from Bill Cooper, everyone's favorite in this live chat, I'm sure. There's also another 10.5-hour video and probably some videos that I've never heard of. And like Bram, empty your cup, empty my cup. And it's interesting because first, I'm not woke because I listened to Bill Cooper. I was woke before Bill Cooper. I knew about Bill Cooper. What wokeness is being able to do your own research. You're searching for the truth. The truth that you thought that was told to you by mainstream media, by public education, maybe even private education, government, institutions, your church, if you go to one, your religion, you thought those were all the truths that you needed to know. And you took them for granted because they are in positions of power, positions of expertise, positions of certification, positions where they are to be believed. And why wouldn't you believe them? They got all these accreditations. They're a Rhodes Scholar. Why wouldn't you understand? Why wouldn't you want to believe in a Rhodes Scholar? I mean, do you even know what a Rhodes Scholar is? It's just because they're a scholar from Rhode Island? Is that what it is? Or is there something a little bit more to being a Rhodes Scholar and what it means? Rachel Maddow is a Rhodes Scholar. You guys know that. Bill Clinton is a Rhodes Scholar. They're obviously geniuses because they've done a lot of great work, huh? No. So, okay. So going through my research, okay, why does all the symbolism exist? Why aren't we taught about the symbolism? Why are the symbolism that we are taught not the actual symbolism of what, when you research what people actually believe that they don't actually say in public? Why is it always a secret? Why do we have a government that always works in secret? Why do we have these powerful, rich people, people in positions of power, people who we don't even know in public, attending a lot of these private meetings of billionaires and millionaires and leaders of what we would say agriculture or energy or health or whatever? It's like going to the Bilderberg meeting. It's basically just like Bill Clinton, Loretta Lynch meeting at the tarmac, talking about their grandkids. It's all it is, guys. You guys are taking secret societies way out of proportion. I mean, just because a couple of these famous or not yet famous people end up being in these little secret society meetings and they end up becoming president or, something like that. I mean, it's just coincidence. I'm serious. Secret societies and these meetings and all the symbolism, it's just mythology. It doesn't mean anything. People who are in these secret societies are way up there. They just like to fool people, mess around. I mean, the reason that they make a lot of money is because they're just geniuses and they understand business, and it doesn't mean that it's because of their connections. No, it's not because of their connections. It's because they're just smart. I mean, have you talked and listened to these people? George W. Bush, I mean, that guy was a genius. I mean, he didn't sound like a genius, but he was a genius. I mean, that's how he became president. Donald Trump, Donald Trump is just a genius of geniuses. He's got the #2 book in the world, #1 being the Bible, which he says. Or maybe it was the opposite way around. He's a genius. I mean, he can't be a millionaire, billionaire by being dumb. I mean, just look at who's the guy? Mark Zuckerberg, right? He's a genius, right? You listen to him talk, he's so coherent. And yeah, I mean, have you seen that movie? I mean, his IQ is just through the roof. It's just amazing how these geniuses can come up with some social media platform and build it up from scratch and become billionaires without having any type of family history or connections. Oh, wait. Maybe I didn't do enough research on that. Or maybe you didn't. I don't know. So this is just me talking. What? Sarcasm? What are you talking about? There's no one else here to talk to, so I'm just kind of winging it for a while. Well, I did see Garden say he was gonna come in, and Snork is waking up and getting McDonald's French fries. I mean, he can't handle himself. He knows that they're all controlling and all knowing. If you ever put French fries in the shape of an M, you know what that symbolism is? I mean, just out of curiosity. How's it going, Angel? Yeah, so it's great. I don't know why you guys are here. You guys can make out like Bram and leave if you don't like what I present or talk about, and that's fine with me. 12 people watching to 1 or 2 people watching, I'm still okay with that. If you want to watch birds eat the poop of their baby chicks, you guys can watch that earlier on like I did. And yeah, I mean, let's see. If we had a comparison between who has more control, say a congressman or a billionaire, who would you pick? I would pick the billionaire. But then if you had to pick between a banker, someone who owns a central bank or even a private bank, who do you think has more money? The billionaire who have their assets tied up in equity and whatnot, bonds, whatever, what have you. I think it's the one who owns the bank, in my opinion, because they control it. They can say, you know what, you didn't follow through on this thing. I know people, and you may have $1 billion imaginary money that we can print out whenever we want, or tell a country to print out whenever we want. I think they could just become trillionaires in a day if they wanted to, or they could pretty much make everyone poor. Those things called recessions and depressions. When we can make money out of thin air, how does that happen? I mean, we just borrow from ourselves in the future, right? Isn't that what they say? That our debt is just borrowing from the future, and we can keep borrowing from the future, and that it's just going to be paid off in the future. It is. I mean, look at the millennials. They're going to pay it all off by the time it's 2040. They've got great jobs right now. I mean, unemployment is just like non-existent. They're making like 6-figure salaries right out of college. Have you heard about that? I mean, it's easy to see that they're just gonna pay off the debt. Plus, college is just cheap. It's almost free. I mean, they don't want it free because it's so cheap. I mean, no one goes into debt after they go to college. So we all know that it's just going to be paid off in the future, the debt. So we can keep borrowing from it, right? It's just math. We can print money out of thin air. We could borrow from ourselves in the future, yet when a recession happens, for some reason, people die. People jump off of buildings. Why do people jump off of buildings when there's a recession? Don't they know that they can just print imaginary money? And you know what? They don't need to kill themselves. It's just gonna all accumulate into from nothingness to something. All they have to do is just wait a little while. All right, finally, I don't have to talk to myself. How's it going, Garden?
Check.
Yep, I hear you.
What's up, dude?
Nothing. I'm just
fighting with the people in the chat over Bill Cooper.
Not necessarily Bill Cooper.
Bill
they
Cooper
can like
shit,
or hate him.
Dude, he's shit. What are you gonna do about it?
It's just what he says that I really care about. But what actually adds some credence to it is that he's attacked by the government. He had plenty and ample amount of time to attack a government institution if he wanted to, or go crazy. You know, all of a sudden, you know, he predicted 9/11 and he decided to just go crazy a couple months afterwards for some cops that are disguised as teens on a pickup truck in his little small town home, where like his nearest neighbor is probably like a quarter of a mile. I mean, that makes sense in my opinion.
Well, and who knows exactly what happened? I wasn't there, but it sounds to me.
There were.
It sounds to me like, because there's conflicting reports, different people on the scene said different things, and what it sounds like is he was getting super pissed off. At that point, he was already had a fucking warrant. The federal marshals were after him, okay, and they had a warrant out for him, and he knew that. So for a year, it seems like he just kind of hunkered down, and maybe he drove himself a bit nuts, and then he started flipping out a bit at his neighbors when they were getting too loud. People showed up, and then he just started, he maybe thought he was going to, the federal marshals were going to get him, and he started shooting.
Are you sure you researched the stories quite right? Here, how about
I've read a couple of different accounts of it. Because I think you're.
Yeah, I know. I was meaning I didn't want to show the typing. I might have to show.
As far as this other stuff, man, it seems like you keep bringing up things that have nothing to do with his actual claims. Like, the government was after him. Well, the government's after a lot of people. He predicted 9/11. There's lots of people who said that the U.S. was going to do a major false flag attack in order to consolidate power way before 9/11 happened. Including the Heritage Foundation wanted it to happen. They advocated for it. They said we needed another Pearl Harbor. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's nothing really unique there. You got to look at the evidence, not like or at least look at his claims, since we can't know the evidence. We can't know what happened at that ranch, really. But we can listen to his claims and then just judge him on that. Not any of this other shit.
Okay. So what claims of his do you think are false?
You're asking, well, what claim? Let's start with this. Which claims do you think are true?
Freemasonry, symbolism, Illuminati.
Let's start with, let's not go up. What about the Freemasons? What specifically does he say about the Freemasons that you believe is correct?
That at the end, that they're pretty much followers of our Luciferians. That's who that they believe in as a deity. No one who goes up in the ranks knows until the end, and those who are Christians, they're pretty much not going to make it to that 33rd degree and higher. And it's a secret club. You can't, if they're not going to talk about what's going inside their secret society. They're going to lie. So you can't really talk to a Freemason, expect them to tell you the truth or tell you anything about what's going on in there. And that's easily foreseeable. He talks about William Morgan and the history of that with George Washington and the infiltration of Freemasonry by the Illuminati. And we can see that even George Washington, the first president of the United States, states that claim as it was happening in letters. He states, and if you follow William Morgan, you could even read letters from John Quincy Adams talking about the situation of William Morgan. George Washington wasn't around with the William Morgan incident, but he wrote letters about how Illuminati, that there are infiltrations of Freemasonry, and he wasn't really, that was something to watch out for. And then and then there's ties to Freemasonry with that Mormonism. And what's interesting is William Morgan's wife ended up after she was what is it when your husband dies, or your wife dies, a widow.
Or
yeah,
widower.
was actually one of the many wives of the founder of Freemasonry. Was it Joe Smith? Yeah, that's right. And that's a crazy.
You mean of Mormonism?
Yeah, Mormonism. Mm-hmm. And that there was the first third party. I mean, it's always been Democrats and Republicans since the inception of the United States. But the first third political party was called the Anti-Masonic Party. I mean, I don't think anyone really knows that. You pretty much have to tell them. They're like, what? No, what? And then no one knows the story about it. I don't think there's even anything in textbooks about anyone named William Morgan. If you look into history, if you look into probably the history books, they probably don't even say it's the Anti-Masonic Party. They probably call it a different party, because what it ended up becoming was the third party that everyone kind of remembers from way back then. I can't remember right now. When he goes into the assassination of JFK, and you could see that he talks in detail about the original film, and the original film by Zapruder that he went all over. Hey, how's it going, Ryan? Are you still streaming on your show too, or
no?
Okay.
He's probably on his channel mocking us. He likes to do that.
I don't like to do
that. Oh, we all know that.
That was not me who started that. That was you guys asking me to go.
I didn't ask you. I don't know who. I don't know, but I didn't.
Yeah, it was a North Korean
agent. But anyways, okay. So to go on with what's up,
he talks about all these famous people that are Freemasons. He talks about Albert Pike. He was a general, and of course he has the only statue of a Confederate soldier in Washington D.C. or anywhere in D.C. is Albert Pike, but he's not even wearing his Confederate uniform. He's wearing his Masonic outfit. And then if you look into the secret societies of a couple of presidents that they've all been in, and talks about even, it's the left-right paradigm, and it doesn't matter. They're all just in the same society. There's always, and the ones who want to fix the problems that are around in the world are the ones who cause the problems in the first place. There's a specific term for that, and I forget what it is. I think there are mentors.
Well, there's a lot there, dude.
Yeah.
Like, let's start with the first one.
Okay.
That Freemasonry is founded in Luciferianism.
No, it wouldn't say it's founded in. It originated separately. I would just say that.
You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can.
Yeah, I can hear you now, dude.
Never mind.
Okay, but anyways, he mentioned this briefly, right? Like he mentioned the relationship between the Templars and the Freemasons. Now that's real. All right, like the Templars were involved in the Crusades, right? And that means that they garnered a lot of power and a lot of wealth through looting and through, when you control armies, like you have a lot of political power as well. Now, in addition, because of where it was at, there was a lot of ideas coming from the east into Jerusalem. And this is the first time that Europeans had been exposed to a lot of these ideas en masse, right? So the Templars started to develop all kinds of symbols, all right, new symbols. And another thing to bear in mind is that the idea of Lucifer and Luciferianism back then, it wasn't consolidated like it is now. Okay, people didn't have a clear idea of what the devil or Lucifer was or anything like that. All right, the Templars started to adopt symbols like Bahamut, and another one of their symbols was a man with his head cut off, like a decapitated head. And it appeared to the Christian church that they were worshiping these things over God. And they would straight up use the name Lucifer in some of their rituals and their writings, because to them it was a symbol of, it doesn't have the same connotations that it does now. Okay. It was a symbol of enlightenment. Lucifer is a light bringer.
Mhm.
That's where that comes from. Anyways, time goes on. Church gets sick of this shit, and they decide to smash the Templars. So they accuse them of devil worship. They hang a bunch of them. They're like, you're homosexuals, because the Templars would travel around in pairs. All right. It was part of the way that they did things as they traveled through Europe.
The whole thing with Lucifer was that he was still an angel. He's still an angel. No, they never took that away from him. He was just all an angel. He's still an angel. So
right, but
no.
the idea of what an angel is and what an idea of like a lesser divine being was different. You know, like when you say angel, it doesn't have the same meaning that it does now.
You've seen the Dogma, right? The movie Dogma, Kevin Smith movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not a long time.
Totally. That's a movie. That was actually the church they used was actually like the town north of me. Little known fact. Anyways, go on. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm
trying to make.
I'm drunk. I'm sorry, dude.
Good,
I'm
dude.
sorry.
Well,
I loved
stoned,
your turquoise
so
video. I can't believe you found turquoise.
No
up
shit,
in
dude. That's
Michigan.
crazy.
That was crazy. Yeah,
But-
I watched that. I subscribe to your channel.
Nice, man. Donate. Anyways,
Donate.
I
would.
me money.
You my nickels.
Actually,
I'll give you a
just so you guys know that Garden Gnome doesn't accept any money for himself. He just tells you to donate to Wolfpack and TYT. And,
okay.
That's what I'm.
Hey, getting money out of politics. That's important. That's important.
All right, let me finish this up.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to make it concise.
I'm sorry,
because it's all good. It's all good. It's a very long history. I'm trying to cut out a lot of it.
Mhm.
All right, so
I'm gonna mute myself.
The Templars were fucking broken up by the church. All right, they were sick of the Templars. They had accumulated too much wealth, too much power, especially in the Holy Land. You remember Silk Road's right there. So, anyways, they break up the Templars and they accuse them all of devil worship.
Yeah,
and
they saw him as a threat.
And what happened?
The church saw the Templars as a threat.
Mute yourself.
What happened?
Mute. Going back to mute.
What happened was that all right, where was I? You fucked me up. All right, so they broke up the fucking Templars, right? And they accused them of devil worship and all this shit. And what the church did, our modern understanding of what Lucifer is, of what angels and devils are, and all this stuff comes from that period. That's when the church really started to define what these things were. And the Templars broke up, but these were powerful men, and there was a lot of them, and a lot of them went into hiding. And a lot of these people evolved into what we call the Freemasons now. That's why you see a lot of these different traditions all around Europe, these Freemasonic traditions. And if you look at the symbols of Freemasonry, you'll see the chopped off head. You'll see all this other crazy shit. And it originated from the Templars and that period. So Bill Cooper doesn't explain that. He just says that they're all fucking devil worshippers. And that's it. They're devil worshippers and they're out to control the world.
No, not necessarily.
These Freemasonic groups were and still probably are out to control societies. Okay.
I don't think you're interpreting Bill Cooper correctly, Garden. But go ahead, Bob.
I'm just saying I'm totally against secret societies. That shouldn't exist. That's just asking for problems, in my opinion. I'm gonna mute myself again. I'll be right back.
And I am oversimplifying it, dude. He does say he goes into it more than that.
I mean, he's pretty much talks. One of his missions was to get all the Freemasons that were in it, telling them the stuff that their brothers within the Freemasonry weren't telling them, that they're being duped, that once they get up higher, what's going to be revealed to them is exactly what he's revealing to them on his radio show. And so trying to get a lot of these people out of a society that's trying to take advantage of them in some way or form. And especially if they're Christians, because there's definitely a lot of Christians that went into Freemasonry that went out because they didn't like what's being revealed to them. What they are supposed to do it didn't follow their dogma, I guess you could say, their teachings, their followings, whatever it is. And so I like that part, because I mean, if you think about it, if you're listening to some guy who's not part of this club telling you all about this club and what they do, and once you rise to power, and he tells you that, hey, why don't you ask your brothers what's really going on? They don't tell you anything. Who are you going to really trust? Are you going to trust this person who's revealing everything to you through his research, or the people in your secret society or your whatever club that you're in that won't tell you anything until you advance? And that's a great strategy, in my opinion, and that's pretty smart, because a lot of people are used. It's a big pyramid scheme, and that's how he calls it, because it is a pyramid scheme.
The structure, the structure. Did you want to say something, Bob? Go ahead, dude.
Yeah, no, it sounds okay. Hold on, I can go outside. Door creaking. Hold on. Screen door shutting. Okay, quiet now. That sounds a whole lot like, I was in the Boy Scouts, and we had this thing called Order of the Arrow, and like there were different levels of it, and you had to be like nominated for it. It was a secretive kind of thing. You know, everybody wanted to be in it. You know, they wanted to do their best so that they'd be nominated for it. Like, I get what they're going for. I get what they're like, their modus operandi is, you know, trying to get everybody on the same level, trying to get everybody to understand that, like, maybe there's something more than what you are as an individual person, like trying to get you involved in, you know, a greater group. But at a certain point, it just, to me, felt like cultish. That's all, you know. So, yeah. All right, that's it.
No, that's good. I agree with that. I mean, the thing is, if they review to you what the prize is, and you're like, yeah, I don't know.
No, they never told you what the prize was.
Yeah,
it was always a
I'm
promise,
just using an analogy. Is if they reveal it to you at the front during entry, I mean, your motivation to get it, if you don't really like what it is that they offer at the end, you're like, you know, I don't really care for that. You're never really going to advance or be motivated to do what they tell you to do, type of thing. So I think secrecy
that's
the way
my whole thing against secret societies. That's their whole game. It's like a pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
Like I mean, in the simplest way, it's a pyramid scheme. That, you know, in a moral sense, in a like psychological sense, you know, oh, we're gonna promise you greatness, you know, or whatever, you know, or enlightenment or whatever it is, you know. But they'll never produce that. That's something you got to find yourself.
Yeah.
So.
And do you think there's a lot of fallout of that, or are they just enmeshed in it? Like, say certain people who are maybe like 31st, 32nd Freemasons or something, and they realize they'll never make 33rd. So, and they're not going to reap the fruits of whatever it is by knowing the secrets, and they know, of course, they're going to get killed if they reveal anything or whatnot, but at least work as secretly as they can, covertly, to reveal stuff or to try to influence things their way.
I have two friends, one friend from high school, one friend from college, that are both like heavily into the Freemason shit. And like, to me, more of it's more of like for them, it's more of like a social club. It's, you know, it's like Elks or the Moose or, you know, being part of your VFW if you're a veteran, you know what I mean? It's just, it's just a place where they find people that kind of think the way they do. You know, I think that's more of what it's become than what it is. So.
Yeah, I mean, most Masons are just like the people you described. They're just members of these community social clubs or whatever. That's all it is in most cases. When you get up into like the people, just like in any other sector of society, the people with the more wealth in any given organization or faction of society are going to start having more influence. So, you know, Masons aren't any different in that sense, and they've been around for a long time, so they have consolidated their power to a degree. Like the higher level ones.
Yeah, I don't want to segue too much, but one of the things that was discussed is New World Order. And what are your thoughts of that? Do you think that's something that the powers that be seem to be heading towards, that we've been heading towards, or that's just a fabrication? That's
that was one of my things on my I took that like political test thing, and I had a little anarchy symbol and the thing with the all seeing eye saying that like I identify that like there's a greater, you know, force in the world that's controlling everything. So yeah, I guess I could believe that. I could believe there's a bunch of rich people that are influencing how global politics are, you know, exchanged. Sure, why not?
Definitely. Like there's, with these new technologies, the elite see these opportunities. They're like, we can consolidate our power to a degree that we never have before, and you know, there is a plan to reshape society. There's several plans, and different groups are fighting to have their own plan enacted. But no matter what they believe, in 99% of these cases, you know, maybe there's some enlightened group of, you know, what I consider enlightened at least, group out there. But in 99% of these cases, what we have are children playing with blocks. We have the equivalent of like 18th century chemists playing with chemicals, and they don't know what they're doing. Mercury will, you know, give you health benefits and like all this other stupid shit. Like,
right, yeah, and lead oxide makes white powder that you can put on your face and make you look nice.
Yeah, and like, so we have the equivalent here. We have these people playing with technologies and with social and political forces that they don't understand. They have no hope of controlling, because the world is always changing. Like there are too many variables to enact some kind of global order in the way that I see a lot of these groups wanting to lay out. The only real global order that you could create is to get people to calm down of their own accord. That's the real way to world peace, is to have individuals calm the fuck down and learn how to calm the fuck down. All these other things about like, oh, we're going to reshape the economy and we're going to have like a new overlord class and all this shit. It's dumb and very dangerous. These people are not as enlightened as they like to think they are.
Yep. Yeah, for me, when it seems like the New World Order, they seem to be trying to force it through these wars in the Middle East that, you know, the spread the democracy with missiles and soldiers and whatnot, and pretty much having to lie about it with the mainstream media to tell people that it's a good war that we're fighting. And I don't see why people would. I mean, I guess it is working. A lot of people support the military efforts of the United States, within the United States at least, but at least outside the United States, I'm pretty sure they don't like what America's doing. But of course, they can't say it because they're in a country that doesn't have freedom of speech.
Looks like we pissed Bob off. There wasn't enough TYT content. for him.
I don't think he got pissed off. He
I
probably
think he gets logged off occasionally,
yeah.
randomly.
I noticed he had issues before in Ryan's channel, right, with Zoom.
All right, dude. I'd like to, since this is kind of the weird conspiracy hour, if you got time, I'd like to play like the first 10 minutes of a video, and we can go over it.
What's it about?
It's about consciousness change in the way that ideas develop, and the author is a guy who's written about conspiracies he wrote about them for like 40 years.
All right,
I'm not
go
sure in
for
the
it.
first 10 minutes of this there's too much conspiracy talk, although I'm sure it'll be brought up. I can't quite remember.
Sure. I mean,
But,
usually it would be good to have like its own topic on it, but let's go ahead and if you want to show it, go ahead.
Showcase it.
Yeah. I mean, we could do it now, or we could do it another night if you want. Up to you.
How about we do it this? I'm going to give you the link, and then you can put it up. There's some issue here.
Sure.
There we go.
Okay.
You might have to rewind it from the beginning. I think I started playing it.
It would have time on it, so it doesn't. So it's fine.
Yeah, I see.
Hold on, there's a little commercial. Robert Anton Wilson. Okay. I'm sharing it now. Hold on to your butts, everybody. Let's see.
So are we going to be able to hear this on the Zoom?
Yep.
All right.
Ominous tones.
Sounds True presents Robert Anton Wilson Explains Everything, or Old Bob Exposes His Ignorance. Session 3, Consciousness Change and the Eighth Circuit Model of Human Consciousness.
So, Bob, one of your major themes in all your works is consciousness change, and it seems to even have been a huge theme in your life. Why is this so interesting to you?
And if you want to talk about something, just pause it and talk about it.
A Buddhist monk in Ceylon. It's a simulation of enlightenment. You sit down and as long as you can and think of as many aspects of the answer to the question, why am I sitting here doing this exercise? Well, I'm sitting here doing this exercise because I read about it in a book by Aleister Crowley, and he heard about it from a Buddhist monk in Ceylon. But why did I read a book by Aleister Crowley? Well, because Alan Watts recommended a biography of Crowley. And you go on adding reasons, and after a while you come up with things like, I'm sitting here doing this exercise because the Scandinavians overfished the North Sea in the 5th century, and they couldn't make their living as fishermen anymore, so they turned to piracy. And that's why my grandmother's name was O'Loughlin, which means son of the Dane in Gaelic. And then, of course, ultimately you come to because the sun is the kind of star that has planets, and this is the one planet that we know of in this solar system that can support this kind of life. If you try that exercise, you should do it at least 3 times in a month to find out the infinite number of factors and coincidences and synchronicities and accidents and utterly inexplicable connections you can find that explain why you're sitting here doing that exercise. But one day I discovered I was sitting there doing that exercise because I had polio when I was 4 years old, which I think made me look less athletic in most ways, and therefore more bookish, which led me more and more from fiction to nonfiction, from nonfiction to science and philosophy, etc., until I developed an enormous curiosity about all the questions that everybody thinks they have the answer to, and all the philosophers and scientists are still arguing about. And so, of course, the riddle of consciousness is one of the central ones. A major turning point was Korzybski's Science and Sanity, which persuaded me that we can't make meaningful statements about one reality. All we can do is talk about comparative realities as perceived by different instruments. which includes the instrument that reads all the instruments, which is the human nervous system. Not the brain, the whole nervous system. Every evaluation is an evaluation of the organism as a whole, because the nervous system interlocks with the immunological system, the endocrine system, the neuromuscular system, and so on. So that every evaluation you make is an evaluation of your whole body, and separating it into mind and body is a fictitious dichotomy. It's a synergetic process. And after years of teaching this in various ways, just a couple of months ago, I came up with a new way of teaching it, which is the following. Remind yourself that you know the difference between a movie and real life, and you can keep the two quite distinct in your head, and you can control yourself with that knowledge. And remember the role of the editors, the camera people, and so on, as well as the actors. Then go see one of these really gory slasher movies that are so popular these days. And see if you can keep you remember all through it, this is only a movie. See if the director doesn't make you jump or cringe at least once, or grab the chair or something like that, or do some kind of physical reaction. That shows how reactions are reactions of the organism as a whole, and what the front brain knows does not control you at all. It just thinks it does. So if all reactions are reactions of the organism as a whole, and evaluations of the organism as a whole, and then you start thinking about things like cultural relativism and neurological relativism and so on. And I suppose the major next step in my explorations of this area was reading Robert D. Ropp's Drugs and the Mind sometime in the late 1950s. I've always read a lot of books on psychology, one of the several top.
So it's an hour long. If people want to watch the rest of it, they can. I put the link in the YouTube live chat.
The point that I wanted to make was the first point that he made about making connections between things, and how your mind will establish connections, and it'll perceive abnormalities and synchronicity of its own accord. And these things will seem rational to you. So like he said, you start off with a question like, why am I sitting here in this chair doing an exercise? And you end up with like, you know, I'm sitting here because one of my ancestors was able to survive like a specific disaster. And, you know, your mind creates indirect connections between things. And I think that's a lot where a lot of people like Bill Cooper, that's the trap that they fall into, is they start going down the synchronicity rabbit hole, and they start making connections and assuming things that they couldn't possibly have knowledge of.
Well, when you're not in, here's the thing. When you're in, goodness, Bob, just two of you. Well, when you're trying to find out the motivations or beliefs of a secret group or a secret society, secret cult, and you're not in that society, you have to make assumptions. But the thing is, within those assumptions, it's just like we were talking about yesterday. I'm not sure you were watching or listening, but the assumptions, when everything else doesn't end up being correct, the only thing you could go back to is that your assumptions were incorrect, and you have to look closer to those assumptions. When you rearrange those assumptions, and then you fit into the model that you've already tested, and that gets you a result that seems logical and fits and doesn't change, then you can kind of say that those assumptions are correct. In most ways. I mean, it's just kind of a logical fitting, the same way with what I basically do with my profession, or did as a quality assurance engineer. So, I mean, there's only things that we can test, but a lot of those times we don't have access, so we just make assumptions that it's correct on that side. And since you can't find out anything about that side because it's hidden, it's secret, you're not allowed to look. There's a lot of these barriers, so you have to assume, and within those assumptions is that, okay, let's assume that it's correct there, but then when you test and things aren't coming back correct, but the code looks good, you know, the setup looks good, the testing looked valid, the only thing you could do is, why don't we ask these people if they have it right on their side? And then what it ends up being is, yeah, they don't have it right. So you have to change your assumptions, see if it fits your model, and if the end result works, then you can kind of say that those assumptions are most likely correct. Not for 100% certainty, but you just know that on the side that you're looking at, hey, our side is good. We checked it 10, 20, 30, 100 times. All we can see is that it's the assumptions are wrong. So we have to look at the assumptions, because we can't investigate the assumptions. So we have to try to just keep changing things around until it works. So that's just kind of my analogy on it.
Well, are you aware that, I mean, most of society's ideas about like the Illuminati and all this stuff comes from the guy that you were just listening to?
Yeah, well, he
was the one who first started bringing like that idea into the public consciousness.
Here's the catch-22. When you have someone within a secret society telling you what the secret society is doing,
but he's not.
The secret society makes it so you're not allowed to tell the truth about it. How much can you glean from what's truth, what's not true?
Well, if you know anything about that dude, to suggest that he was like some Illuminatus is absurd. And what he says, he was the one who popularized all this, and he's of the mindset that there are many different groups fighting for control of societies.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that. But
there isn't one overriding, like it's not the Freemasons and it's not the Rothschilds.
There's a lot of groups. There's a lot of individuals, but they have to have groups. They have to have allies somewhere. They have to have some type of teamwork, I guess, whatever it is that you want to call it. But the thing is, it doesn't mean that they're always right or that they're correct in what they do or they believe. But what the thing that Bill Cooper is trying to find out is, what are their beliefs and what do they believe in? Not necessarily, and with those beliefs, how are they trying to change things? Are they trying to change things regardless of their beliefs, or are they change things because of their beliefs?
But it's like with Sanders, all right? Like, I don't really care why
I just got a question about Bill Cooper.
Okay, go ahead.
I was gonna let me finish my point here.
Okay, let Garnet go first.
It's like with Sanders, like, I can argue back and forth about why he did what he did, but in the end, it doesn't matter. Like, his actions are what matter. And it's the same thing with these upper levels of society. It doesn't matter what they believe. It matters what they're doing. So it's not a question of finding out what they believe.
Belief has a lot.
Believe in order to stop what they're doing, because you're just adding an extra step. You just go right to stopping to what they're doing.
I mean, here, one quick one. Oh. Sorry, Bob. Just to retort. Beliefs have a lot of influence on a lot of people. And if you even think about the Christians, when they think about, they don't think about evolution. They, how they fit their story, their Bible into the end. Means the conclusion. So it's not based off of scientific evidence, testing, or whatever. It's based off of stories that fit the end story. And so beliefs have a lot of influence over how people act. Go ahead, Bob. Sorry.
Well, I'm gonna go. I had something else, but I'm gonna go off of that. Like, my parents, like, I went to a Christian school for 12 years. My parents are both teachers at Christian schools, 2 different Christian schools. But yeah, I'm an atheist. So I went to Christian school for 12 years and it made me an atheist. But
we have that going
regardless,
around. So, yeah.
Regardless of that, my thing is, like, from, you have your, like, evangelical, like, my parents, to me, they're religious, they believe that stuff, but they don't push on other people. They don't, God, it's hard to explain. Like, I know my dad knows that I don't believe in God, and he's not like, he doesn't come down on me. He doesn't, he's not like, what are you doing? You're going to go to hell kind of shit. Like I kind of think to me, my father is almost like an agnostic. You know, he might not believe that there's. I think he still believes in a God. I don't think he knows that like what that God is.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like me in a
he
way.
thinks there might be something out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I get what you're saying, but I can't. It makes me feel weird. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I don't know.
Well, I'm just saying is just like if you look at the evangelicals, right? How the evangelical Zionists, whatever you want to call it, they want the end
Sure.
times to happen. So what they do is they influence.
Oh yeah, they're trying to. Yeah, they're trying to make the Bible happen. That's what they want. Yeah, for sure.
And so
that's like my parents. Like that's what I'm saying. Like they're not like that. Like they don't. They're Lutheran, Missouri Synod Lutherans. You know, they think. You know, I almost think like Lutheran. You know, you got like Lutherans are like just like left of Catholics, basically, right? I'm not sure that most of them even think that like all this stuff is really happening, like all this stuff is really supposed to happen. Like, it's just people get so caught up in religion, people get so caught up in what's supposed to happen that we don't just really let what is going to happen. You know what I mean? I'm really drunk, so I hope that made sense. A little bit, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's probably some people that don't believe in the Freemasonry or the Luciferian stuff, but again, they're in it because of the brotherhood. You know, it's just like I would say, like my wife, she wants to go to church again, but it's not because she really believes in this stuff. Because she has a lot of she used to play rugby, a lot of friends that are lesbian, and of course, a lot of religions aren't for the LGBT type of sexuality. So
there are a couple that are, but yeah,
there. I mean, so some priest was preaching against same sex stuff. She's gonna be no, right? But then she's there.
What I got a question. Why? What is making her seek that kind of fulfillment? That's my question. Is what makes people want to seek fulfillment from a higher power? And that's how I see it.
Well, she doesn't go to church anymore. But
well, I used to go. Dude, I got forced. I had to go to church for the first 15, 16 years of my life. It's like I get it. Like I understand like the power of church, the power of like community, the power of believing in what all these other people believe. Like, see, I think that's the problem, is that like if we could just be like, hey, people should be able to eat, people should have houses. Like, why can't this be brought into that fold? You know what I mean? I don't understand how it's not, because that's basically what Jesus preached. So if you're a Christian, like you should believe that, people should have food, people should have housing, people should have basic needs met. So that's why I'm a communist. So
I mean, like when Bill Cooper has his thoughts against socialism or communism, I'm not in total agreement. But as far as the powers that be trying to manipulate people into socialism and communism for their own benefit, it's not going to happen the way they think that it's going to happen. I mean, if socialism and communism happened with Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton in charge, do you think it'll actually be good? No. Right? And the same thing if it's like George Soros and the Koch brothers setting up socialism in the United States. It's not going to be any good. So
but you see, it
has to be within the power of the people, where people are really invested into a system. But if there's only like 10% of the population for it and like 90% aren't, it's not going to work.
Well, my whole thing with communism is that it won't happen until there's like until once we have all of our necessities met, then maybe it can happen. Like once everybody has enough food, once people have shelter, then it's possible. It's like Star Trek.
Yeah.
You know, it's fucking Star Trek. So, you know, once there's no want, then
or no need, you mean? I mean, like,
no, there's no need, no want. Exactly, no want. If you want, if you need, if you feel the need to have to go on a powerboat on some lake, you can have that opportunity. It's available to you. You know, we have this shit right now with like bike sharing and stuff like that, and food co-ops, but it just needs to, you know, get larger. That's my opinion of it.
I mean, I like the idea, especially. I mean, utopia has to happen in some form, in some way, but not from.
It will eventually. Somehow.
But not from a belief system of total control of the entire population by an elite. Percent, right?
Right.
Same thing with. I mean, like these elites, whatever, these power players. I mean, we could feed the entire world. There shouldn't even be hunger at this point in the stage with technology and agricultural ways. That
there wouldn't have to be if we really wanted to end world hunger. Yeah, we have all the capability and means necessary to do
shelter. I mean, we have so many homes that aren't even that are just vacant.
Dude, I was talking this with Ryan. We were saying in the United States, there's 18.5 million homes vacant, and there's only 3.5 million homeless people.
Yeah.
So we could give homes to all those people and still have 14,000 homes left over for everyone else to sell if you want to, whatever.
And so what I'm trying to say is I don't agree with Bill Cooper on everything, but his point with being against socialism and communism is based off of structuring everything that, okay, this isn't working, so let's do socialism. We're in control and you don't have to do anything and that type of stuff. So it's just a method of control, but they're controlling the narrative, the social.
Exactly. And, you know, when you look at it, it's two sides. What they're doing is, you know, a lot of these people are doing, it's just two sides of the same coin. Like when it's more useful to control the people using capitalism, then we use capitalism. When it's more useful to like use socialism and communism to control the people, then we use that.
Yeah.
So it's not even about political ideologies, and that's a lot of people like Bill Cooper will make it about political ideologies, and they'll miss that extra step. They'll be like, it doesn't matter, like what the system is.
It's not political. Political ideologies. Man, it's just something to identify with. It's just something to show what you feel your beliefs are. You know, like I don't. It's hard to. You're never even in communist countries. Look at China. Who does the United States do most business with? China. They're they're communists. Like
they're fascist.
It's all relative. It's all. Well, I'm just saying it's all a melting pot of what's good for most of the people most of the time is what it really comes down to.
Well, I mean, the question I think that Bill Cooper's asking is, are we shifting into an era where socialism and communism are going to be used as an alternative to capitalism to control people? And that's a valid question.
I sure hope not.
I mean,
that's not as a self-described communist. I really don't want that to happen.
That in itself is a valid question.
I mean, the thing is with communism that we have in a lot of countries today is the ones in power. They don't live like everyone else. They're wealthy. They have the power. No one could take it away. And so
there's lots of people that argue that China is now a fascist state, and I tend to agree with them.
Yeah,
and it's corporate and government power combined.
Well, I really thought they were going in direction until they did that whole like social credit thing, and I was like, whoa, what the fuck is that? You know?
Yeah.
I think they were going in the right direction. Social credits, that's messed up.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is it doesn't matter what type of system that we have. If we have corrupt people who want
that's
to
the thing. Okay,
power, nothing's going to work.
Well, so you want to say okay, capitalists follow like Adam Smith, right? And communists follow Karl Marx. Like, do you think capitalism right now is doing the world good? And fucking absolutely not. You know?
Well, and then let's take it to the next step. Okay, so like they just the method isn't the important part of the equation, right? It's just another variable. So are their beliefs an important part of the equation? How much does it matter why they are doing this? It matters to a degree. Like it's helpful to understand your enemy to a degree.
Like,
but
ends justify the means.
In the end, you have to get ring with them, and you're not in the ring. It just doesn't matter so much. You've studied him, you followed his methods and whatever. I mean,
it matters a lot. That's why a lot of fighters.
But it doesn't matter that event.
Okay. Wait, we're getting. Okay,
let me finish up, dude.
Okay.
Let me finish up, drunk Bob.
I am. That's
Let me finish up, drunk Bob.
I'm gonna finish up my beer.
All right.
Go on.
So what I'm getting at, the training methods, watching the training methods matters. But does it matter if you get in the ring with Evander Holyfield that he's a Christian? Is that going to help you in the fight? No. You know, and it's the same thing with these fucking groups. Like,
it depends. If you get psyched up because you're like,
yeah,
hell, Satan, you know, if you're a fucking Satanist against Evander Holyfield, that might get in your brain. You might
be able to fuck with him a little bit, or maybe you realize he's just not going to bite your ear off like Mike Tyson would. So that's kind of helpful. But like in the end, it doesn't really matter who's going to win the fight.
No, probably not.
You know, so, and it's the same thing in dealing with these groups. Like it's helpful to understand their beliefs to a degree, but to try to glean something valuable off of studying their beliefs in depth, you already know the truth. And the truth is that they will continue to try to control you.
All right, let Bob go. He's been itching at this.
All right.
Well, that just reminds me, like, okay, so like I told you guys, I live like in the most like conservative suburb of Chicago, like county. Like we have a like progressive Facebook page that I belong to, and you know, like you just find that most of them, they're still like on the Hillary Clinton shit. Like they'd rather have Democrats than Republicans, no matter what those Democrats do. And to me, that's sickening. Like I can't believe, you know what I mean? Like these people are just they're so sick of the right that they'll go to the slightly less right as an option. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah,
people are
confused right now. They don't know what, because they're either going to have to go with the social justice warriors that maybe they may not follow religiously, or they're going to have to go with the pedophiles, you know, rapists, whatever. And they don't know. They want to go with that one.
So fucked up. See, isn't that messed up that that's the choice though? Like that's what I'm saying. Like, isn't like what? Like, what is going on with our politics today?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, if you say anything bad about what Israel's doing to any other country or to the Palestinians, you're an anti-Semite.
Yep.
And it's like, do I want to go?
You're a fucking Nazi.
Dude, I was like watching.
Are you a Nazi? You're a Nazi, aren't you?
I was watching.
You disagree with what Israel does.
I was watching this Roseanne shit today, right? All this drama about Roseanne, and they kept calling her anti-Semitic, and I'm like, that's the stupidest fucking shit I've ever heard. Like, have you ever seen Roseanne's tweets? She's like uber Zionist, super Zionist. She's like super fucking Zionist.
She was a Green Party nomination for president in 2008.
She flipped.
I mean, I don't know what the fuck happened.
She's fucked up. Like, she's a bit crazy. That's the real truth. She got in a car accident and all this, I guess, when she was a kid. It fucked her up.
See, that's what money. To me, that's money, man. That's what money fucking does to you, right there. That's a perfect example.
Ryan, you haven't said much. I'd like to know your input.
Ryan's muted.
Unless
Do you know you're muted, Ryan? Is he frozen? He looks frozen. I think he's stuck.
No, he's blinking. I think he's playing World of Warcraft. Ryan, are you playing World of Warcraft?
Are you playing PUBG, Ryan? He's playing PUBG. Fortnite?
We can't hear you.
He's reporting to his Illuminati masters.
Do you have to join with your other
Australians? He's reporting back to the Queen. That's what he was
go.
doing. He was sending messages to the Queen. I know it.
I'm just fucking around in Illustrator.
Oh, okay.
He's drawing stuff.
So do we want to open it up to anything goes? Ryan, do you want to host again? Because you're hosting. You don't have to stop hosting when I'm doing this.
Oh
thing.
no, you had 16 and I only had 5.
Like what, 5 or 6 or
Yeah.
We had a good convo going though. That was good stuff. That was good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm saying.
I like how the conversation can just kind of fluctuate to something else where it doesn't have to be within.
It was the greatest
order and Freemasonry type of stuff. I mean, I just want to do some on-topic stuff and you know, every once in a while, and not just do anything goes all the time. So,
all right, we'll put the Wolfpack donation information up on the screen, and let's get to the next segment.
Go ahead, Bob.
My grandfather was a what do you call it? Freemason.
Yeah, James's father was. So do you want to host? And we'll just move it to your channel?
No, man, stay here. It's all good. We don't need to move anyway.
Okay. So people who are on Zoom, stay here. People who
I got a question. Real quick.
Sure.
Ebon, what time is it?
For me, it's 11:53 p.m. Central Time. Where'd you go?
Oh, you're in Texas now, right?
No, I'm in Nebraska.
Nebraska, Illinois. Okay, you're Central too. I'm Central. 11:53.
Yeah.
But it's still May 27th, correct?
No, it's the 28th.
Yeah.
Or 29th today.
29th. Yeah.
It's the 30th.
Ryan, it's the 30th. No, for Garden Gnome, he's Eastern, so he's past the.
Yeah.
He's in Michigan.
All right. So
Ryan, it's almost tomorrow. So.
Okay. Anyways, I'm stopping the stream just to set it up as an open topic.
Where are we going?
You guys are staying here. Everyone's staying here.
Oh, okay.
I'm just changing the things.
I've had like 6 beers, so I'm messed up.
That's right.
I apologize.
So just stay. It's just everyone can stay here. They don't have to go anywhere.
Just do it. Everyone knows the fucking drill.
I don't have to do anything.